Good evening, church. Sorry, still trying to figure this out a little bit here, but just pray for me as we go, and hopefully God will get out what He wants here. But this morning I was teaching in Sunday school, and I guess I can't really get away from it entirely, and I still got parts of it that I'd like to share tonight, if that's okay. And we're going to be reading in 2 Corinthians, and it's not going to be long. Pray for me, and maybe we'll just say what God has me to say and read the scripture, and hopefully be out of here and won't take up too much time. But let's turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Second Corinthians chapter 5. We're going to be starting at verse 7. Actually, we're going to start at verse 6, if that's all right. But 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 6 says, "Therefore we are always confident, knowing that whilst we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. We are confident." I said, you could say that I'm afraid of the dark. Because that's what it looks like. Mainly because there's flashlights everywhere. You walk into my garage and you're going to see them in like random places. And some of them look like maybe I forgot them there. But trust me, they're there for a reason. And you walk in almost any room of the house, and I promise you can find a flashlight. I got one. I got several in the cars, and several in my work bags, and there's just flashlights everywhere. But I'm not really afraid of the dark as much as I am being afraid of not seeing, or being afraid of what I cannot see. And what I cannot see coming, and maybe what can happen when I can't see. And that's kind of something, I've just always dealt with that for a long time, and maybe one day God will show me exactly why. But you might say, Brother Dakota, maybe this sight means appearance. So Christ is not physically present, so we live by faith. But what I struggle with right here is if you saved, don't tell me that Christ isn't physically present, okay? Because I wasn't saved by a Christ that was not physically present. I was saved by a Christ who is by the Christ that was very present in my life, and in that moment very physically present. I could feel Him all over me. And the more that you go through life, the more you're going to find, and if you listen, if you're new to this walk and you're newly saved, then that's one thing. But if you've been walking with the Lord for some time, then I believe you ought to know what's being said. And if you're a true believer and you live it, then you will see appearances. You will have sight. Some of those things that you see are very much physical, and I believe that there's a lot of times that Jesus makes things tangible, and I guess we can use that just to kind of jump in here. But choosing to trust in God, okay, choosing to trust in God, in God's will and in His promises, in His voice and in His word, to guide us even when circumstances seem uncertain even when our situations are challenging, relying on his wisdom rather than, be swayed by what we see and what we feel or what we think or what we even understand. Because our perspectives are so limited. Our sight is so limited. Our vision is so limited to what God's trying to show us and what he's got in store for us. And sometimes, this can get foggy. And Chase was preaching on Samson, and this thought hit me, and I hope I'm not stepping on anything here, but I think God gave me this thought, and that Samson was more blind with his vision than without his own eyes. And that's pretty crazy to think about, but when you read the story of Samson and you see how God used him and the strength that God gave him, and then you see how he was tricked and how blind he was in certain aspects of it, and then the strength from the faith that he got afterwards, choosing to have faith in God to help him even when he couldn't see, what was awesome. And maybe here's a couple other places. Abram, he left his home and family not knowing, where he was going to go. He was trusting that God and God's promises, we're going to help him and his great, and make him a great nation. It's pretty crazy to think about how he used him. God called him to leave his homeland, journey to a completely new place that he was going to inherit. Despite, not knowing where he was going to end up, where he was going to go, or how he would find it, Abraham just obeyed God, trusting in his promise. Another one we could probably look at was Moses, and this is just summarizing here, but Moses led the Israelites out of slavery. And all of the challenges and the obstacles and the things that he faced and he had to go to, he still had to trust God's plan, even though it was practically impossible. All of the opposition that he faced from the Pharaoh and from the Egyptian army, he still had to make a decision on whether he was going to allow God to lead him and he was going to allow himself to trust in God's promises, or if he was going to fall victim to what his eyes was seeing, to what his physical eyes were showing him. And another example would be David. David is famous for defeating Goliath. But when you really look at how outmatched he was, and just in weaponry alone, in the armor alone, but look at size and numbers, but then you want to look back at the rest of that story and you see how God had protected him from the lions and the bears, and how he helped him and delivered him and his family and the shepherd, and his sheep, from all these other challenges. He still had to trust God that he would deliver him from that situation. Walking by faith is a way of life. It's not just something that we say. It's not just something that we want to have this facade. But walking by faith is something that I think we can see on other people. Not just hear them say the words, but be able to actually look at somebody and see it. Like you can see and you can tell that they mean it. Like they're not playing a game, they're not playing a role, they're living a life of following Christ. And walking by faith, is choosing to actively and intentionally, choose to align our actions with God's will, even when we don't have all of the answers. Relying solely on our sight can lead to a focus on all of the things that are temporarily around us. which is going to help us, which is going to neglect, you know, all of the things eternal, all of the things that God's trying to do for us. Because we're so stuck on what we're seeing. We're so stuck on the things in front of us that are again, all temporary things, all temporary challenges. And I know because someone's out there saying it right now, temporary inconveniences. Faith is not blind. It's being confident in what we believe. It's being confident in what you believe. It's believing and being confident in God's promises and his faithfulness in our lives and to us. When we believe God's plan, believing in God's plan when it does not go our way, when it's not in our favor, when things around us, it's going against the desires that we have. When we think these are the things that are set in place, and we're like, oh, this is happening for a reason. Maybe I got to be doing it because this is what God's will is. Maybe these people are trying to tell me this is the way I need to go. I need to listen to them, and I need to do this. And if I do that, also these other things are, just kind of lining up in order. Surely this has got to be God's will. Surely this is what God has intended for me. But it's not. Or maybe it is, but if you don't truly seek out what God's plan is, if you're not walking by faith and allowing God to reveal those things to you, you could be making, the wrong decisions. Choosing to trust and obey him and let him guide you. Not just praying one time, but praying until you've reached him. Not just praying, God, show me the way, but actively living like you're seeking his way. Waking up and praying, God, I need you today. I need you today because I can't do this. I need to know what you want me to do. I need to know how you want me, to handle these situations. And it doesn't matter how many times you have to do that. And I know sometimes we talk and we preach about, leaving it somewhere, praying and leaving it somewhere. And I believe that there are many times when you have a burden and you need to take something to God, you need to take something to the altar, and you need to pray and you need to leave it there, knowing God's got you. But sometimes you need to pray, and you need to pray until you've reached God. You need to pray until that faith becomes sight. You need to pray until God hears you and you can tell that God is there and he is helping you. When he shows you the way, or when he reveals the answer to you, truly walking by faith is going all in, giving it all that you've got. And when you do that, I believe that's when you're going to feel for the first time, God taking over. When you say, I'm all in, and you're living all in every day. It's not just one day and it's hard and you're like, oh yeah, that was hard. I walked by faith yesterday. You got to live it every day. And every moment that you can, you need to be seeking God's will. You need to be seeking him and his answers. When he says, I hear you, child, you have my attention. I've got you now. This is what you need to do next. Child, this is what you have to go to do next. You need to keep on praying until you hear him. With so many different situations in my life, and so many different situations that we faced and you've faced that you can't see the end of. When you and I don't know what we're going to get through, how we're going to get through it, you can't see the end. You don't know when it's coming. You don't know, where it's going to take us, the decisions that we have to make, the decisions that have to be made, or what the answers are, or where to get them, or where they're going to come, or when they're going to come, or what you're going to have to do to get them. Those are all dark spots and dark moments of our life. But with God, I can walk in the darkness. With God, walking by faith will allow you to walk in the darkness and walk through the darkness. Did you understand that? What I just said right there? Walk through the darkness. Walking by faith is allowing God to navigate you through darkness. Allow Him to navigate you through the areas of your life that you don't understand, through what you don't see, through the answers that you don't have. Because the light of the world is shining through and leading us. The more we practice this, the more we read, the more we study God's Word, the more we meditate on God's Word and stay close to Him, the clearer His voice is going to become to us. And if you're asking yourself right now why that's important, let me tell you, it's because when you need God to help you, and when you need Him to, and you're actively seeking His guidance through dark times or answers to the unknown, you need to be able to hear the voice. You need to be able to hear the correct voice to listen to. Because there will be times when there is nothing but noise that fills us. There's so much going on around us. There's so many different people pulling at us. There's so many different things and ways to go and things in our life that are trying to control the way we need to go. They think this is the right way for someone else. Or they say that we need to do this, or maybe we need to do that. Or like I said earlier, all these different things lining up that give this false presence of a good decision or a good choice. When all these things are adding up, it's easy to say, yeah, this looks like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This feels like this has a lot of benefits to me. And we just jump on it and go for it. And then later on, it's like, oh yeah, it was really good for a couple weeks or for a short amount of time. And then I found out that that's actually not what I was supposed to be doing. That's not what God's will was supposed to be. So it's like the enemy is still finding ways to use good things in a bad way. Can use good things to trick us. So that there are some good to it, but in the long run, it was only going to hurt us. That's why it's important to stay practiced and to stay close to God. We need to be able to know how to respond. But when you walk close to God and you walk by faith, you will become quite familiar with His voice. And you'll become very familiar with how He speaks. And you'll become very familiar with how He moves. It'll be something that you won't question. It'll be something that you won't have to doubt. It'll be something that you won't have to be second guessing because you know. You know. And He will show you and tell you the way to go. And something that's just really crazy to me is looking back on all these past times and all these dark moments of my life and all of these spots and places where I was blind and I had no idea what was going on. It's really crazy to think back at these moments and to remember first that I wasn't blind. I remember seeing, and I remember walking, with sight. I remember walking with, what I needed to do next. And then later I remember, oh yeah, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea how that was going to happen. Because we remember all of these good things that came out of making, certain decisions. And maybe some of them were bad. But we still remember the after part of it, right? Remember what God ended up showing us. Even if it was a lesson we had to learn. But keep on for God. Keep on for God until your faith becomes sight. Let the earnest of the Spirit give you this assurance. I don't really have a whole lot else here, but something I do want to do is I want to leave you with the verse, and I hope that that's okay. But it's going to be John 20, verse 29. Jesus said unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and have yet believed. And many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing ye might have life through his name. That's all I've got for tonight. But walk by faith. It'll allow you to walk in darkness.